Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Fuller here, and so glad you could join me today. I'm going to be talking about audio modulation inside the Unreal Engine through the lens of just normal mixing engineers. People like me who have been in the music business and production business for over 25 years. I've been using mixing boards and DAWs my whole life, and like you, when I transitioned into game software, specifically the Unreal Engine, learning how audio mixing worked was a pretty big learning curve. So in this video, I just want to show you how the audio modulation plugin can give you all of the mixing benefits that you're used to and kind of compare it to the traditional hardware mixing that we're used to with a console. Because inside Unreal Engine, you don't have faders and you don't have this sort of thing visually, but under the hood, you still have the gain staging like you're normally used to. So let's jump in and let me show you and explain it to you so that perhaps you can get a new perspective on how audio modulation works through the lens of a mixing engineer. So let's do this thing. So in a traditional audio workflow, we have a mixer and we have a source, we'll call this a audio source, and this could be anything. It could be drums, could be vocals, could be sound effects. And then we have some sort of output like a speaker or headphones. There's my little headphones. Oh, those look very professional. When you add a sound to the Unreal Engine inside your game, let's say you drop a music track in here. There's our audio source here. This is gonna automatically for you go through the Unreal Engine mixing system and output to the audio hardware, unless you've messed up a bunch of settings or you have something overridden. The default scenario is the audio plays through the audio engine mixing system, which does all sorts of stuff, and then shoots it out to the audio render engine, and then you get the sound. This, by default, is the master submix, is what it's called. And this is by default. So if you don't override that, this should happen in theory. You play your sound source, it comes through the audio engine, and this is, I'm just gonna put a UE5 here because that's essentially the game is doing this mixing. This also considers attenuation and occlusion and does all the math and stuff and then sends out the result to your submix. In a traditional sense, how do we control this level? Well, in a traditional world, we would have a fader on the mixing board, and each channel, let's say this is channel 1, would have its own fader. And then that fader is adjusted by a human being up or down to adjust the level that comes out here. And essentially what you're doing is you have this line signal, or you have this signal coming into your board. 0 is unity, and then mixing boards, you know, they go down in decibels and up in decibels. And you can adjust to your flavor, and it controls the level coming to your speaker. That's pretty familiar with everybody who's ever mixed any audio anywhere. So in Unreal Engine, there are, this kind of is automatically set up here. And this is controlled by numbers assigned to the audio source, and you could watch my video on 11 ways to mix Unreal Engine audio. When you open your audio source, you'll see a volume multiplier, and that volume multiplier is what initially sets this level. That's how we get audio out of the engine. Now, for us audio engineers, we want a lot more control than that, and a lot of us want to approach audio from the mixing board perspective, and that's where audio modulation comes in. So with the audio modulation plugin, we're able to add what's called a control bus, which essentially becomes your fader in a way. And what the control bus does is it allows you to mix your audio in real time by changing the amount of this parameter. One of the questions that's always asked is, how can I control the master volume of everything? So what I want to first do is I want to show you how to use a control bus mix to essentially add what I would call a master volume fader. And so let's just call this the master. And this is already there. What we need to do is find a way to control it with a control bus. So what we're going to do is we're going to, and the way audio modulation works is two there's two main aspects of it. There is the control bus, because ultimately the question we're asking is, how do we control this bus? And so that's where the control bus comes in. So we have component number one is a control bus, and then component number two is called a control bus mix. Now, it sounds complex if you don't correlate them, but once you correlate them, it makes a lot of sense. The control bus is actually essentially just the fader. It's basically this fader here with a number attached to it, a parameter, an amount. The control bus mix would be the equivalent of a person coming and setting that level. So the control bus itself is really just the connection, if you will, to that audio source. The control bus mix would be setting the actual level. So you need both of these things in order for it to work. Or you have to have the control bus hooked up, and you have to have the control bus mix setting the parameters. So what I want to do is, first I want to show you how to just do a master control bus mix, and then we're going to expand on subgroups, because this is where the fun really starts to work. Now, audio modulation goes way beyond audio levels. It could include panning, it could include filtering, low-pass filtering, high-pass filtering. It can include lots of pitch modulation, low-frequency modulation. It can include all those things, but for this purpose, I just want to show you how the audio works, so that then once you get your head wrapped around this, all of the other things will be a lot easier and it'll make a lot more sense. So let's set up our master submix control bus. We're going to set up a master bus mixing fader. And let me show you how to do this. Right now, we have an empty project here. Well, it's not empty. It's a first-person shooter template. But when I hit play, you'll see there's no volume. There's no music or anything like that. Now, when I shoot these, you're going to hear a gun sound just like that. So what I want to do is I want to create a master control bus basically just a master volume. Because, you know, a lot of times people ask me, hey, how do I just make a master volume fader? And here's how we do it. So we are going to add, let me just go here. I've pulled in this music track, just a little bolero jam. And I'm going to pull this in here. So now when I hit play, you're going to hear the music and you're going to hear the guns at just unity gain. So here we go. Got our music rocking. Boom. Okay, and got gunshots. So let's make a master control volume. Okay, so the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna go over here to our all folder and we're just gonna search for submix. And we're gonna filter sound submix, and then it's gonna show us our default sound mixes that we were talking about. We have an EQ, we have a reverb, and we have a master. This is the one we're looking for. This is our master submix default, as I explained earlier. So unless you override this, all of your sounds are going to terminate in this master submix default. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna double click on this, and that's gonna give us our hierarchy here, and we're going to go down here and we're going to go to submix level, output volume, and we are going to click modulate. So what this is going to do, this is going to allow us to add a control bus. So what we're going to do is here, we're going to go under here, under the set elements, we're going to click 1, we're going to click the plus sign, and then here you'll see this blank window. We're going to go over here and we have nothing available because we currently have no control buses in this project. So we're going to make our first one, and it's going to be the master. So we're going to under create new asset control bus. Then I'm going to select the folder I want, and I'm just going to put CB underscore that's how I denote all my control buses. And I'm just going to call this master. So now we have created a control bus master, which, like I mentioned, is just the connection. Right now, no information is going to it. So step number 2, we are going to create a control bus mix. So let's go to our folder here, and let's clear out this search menu. We don't need that anymore. So we have our song, and we have our control bus. Now we're going to right click here. This is how you can create a control bus mix. We're going to go audio, modulation, control bus mix. We're going to go CBM, and let's call this master. Now, one thing to make sure is if you just open your first-person template, you are going to have to go into plugins, and you're going to have to type audio modulation, and you're going to make sure this plugin is initiated. And when you close it, it's going to restart your engine. If you don't click that box, you won't have access to these tools. So I just created a control bus mix master. I'm going to double click on this. Currently we have no mix stages, so we're going to add a mix stage. We're going to go down here and we're going to select the control bus master that we just created. So there we go. So now what we've done is we've set that control bus mix to activate this control bus and control it. So let me show you what's going to happen. So now I'm going to press play. All right, we got our music, and we got our, see, we got our gunshots here. Now, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna free up my mouse. I'm gonna go back to this control bus master, and I'm gonna activate the mix. Now, listen to this. So now here's our control over our master submix. So just like that, we just created a master fader. Now, this is the control bus mix that's sending that this parameter through that control bus. So whatever this number is, and you see here, this is our normalized value from 0 is off, 1 is unity gain. You go over here, there's your -60. I think I said -96 in the thing. I meant -60. Okay. So now let's just set this at 0.5. So that's half volume. And let's deactivate it. So there we go. We're deactivated. Now we're activating. It's kind of like turning on the mixing bus. So let's also change this volume. Let's turn this down. Let's change this to 1. So what this is going to do is when we activate it, it's going to take 1 second to kick in. So let's deactivate the mix. Let's set this to 1. Oh, our music stopped. Hold on. Let's go. Let's try this again. Let's hit start. Now let's go control bus. Okay. So let's set this to 0.5. When I hit activate, you're going to hear it go from full volume to 0.5, and it's going to take 1 second. Here we go. Very smooth. So now our fader is activated. Now we're going to deactivate it, and there we go. So that's how you create the control bus mix. Now, how do you actually control it in the game? This is often the question. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to show you how to just set up some quick ways to implement this mix. Now, the way you call a control bus mix is through code, through blueprint. So what we're going to do is we're going to open up the level blueprint here. And right now we have nothing but event begin play. And so just for this tutorial, and you can activate the control bus mix any way you want. You could do it on an action the player takes. You can do it in code. So what we're going to do is I'm going to enable input. So this is going to enable my keyboard input. I'm going to get player character or controller, and then I'm going to draw this here. Okay, so now this level is going to receive input from my keyboard. Then I'm going to create a keyboard key. Let's go and call this one B. And I'm going to create another keyboard key, and let's call this one N. And then I'm going to create another keyboard key, and then we're going to call this one M. So when I press B, I want to do something. When I press N, I want to do something. And when I press M, I want to do something. What do I want to do? I want to activate that control bus mix. So here's how we do that. I'm going to right click, activate, control bus mix. I'm going to select this one, and we're going to set it to B. Then we're going to choose the mix we made, which is CBM Master. It's the only one available because it's the only one in this project right now. And I'm going to hit save. And so now when I hit B, it's going to activate this control bus. And just to make sure it's working, I'm going to put a print string here. And I'm just going to say mix active. Then I'm going to deactivate it when I press N. Deactivate control bus mix. Which one? The same one we just activated. And to make sure that's working, I'm going to put mix not active. Okay, so let's try it out and see what happens. And hit play. Now we pick up our gun, shoot a few things. Now I'm going to hit B. There you go, and you hear the mix kick in, and you hear the volume turn down, and then I'm deactivate it, which is great. Let me make it a more drastic. Let's go 0.25. Now it's going to go all the way down a quarter. And let's hit B. There we go. Our whole master turned down 75%. Even the guns, shots, and everything. Let's deactivate it. Activate it. Deactivate it. Activate it. Okay, so there we go. We just set up a master control bus mix fader, and for our entire audio, every piece of audio in the game is going to go through this, so it will control the master. Now, let's go back to our first person map. Now, what do I want to do here? Now I want to show you what if we want to adjust that level in real time. So what I want to do when I press M, what I want to do is I want to activate the control bus mix. And then what I want to do is I want to set control bus mix by filter. And so what I'm going to do here is for this control bus mix, I'm going to set just that parameter of that one fader. And so let me get the address of this fader. So CB master, let me show you where the address is. If you go to your control bus, you'll see this address. That's your address, CB_master. So if we put this here, CB_master, now whatever value we set here, it's going to send to that fader. So it's kind of like moving the fader in real time. So I'm going to activate the control bus. And actually, you know what? Let's just do a delay here because I want you to hear the difference. So it's going to activate the control bus and drop down to 0.25. But then after 3 seconds, it's going to set this value back to, let's go 0.6. So we're going to hear it come back up, and we're going to do this over, let's do it instantly. And there we go. So let's check that out and see how that sounds. There we go. Full volume. Let's activate our control bus mix. Okay, and then let's deactivate it. Now we're going to activate it. Now wait 3 seconds. Boom. Jumped back up. Do you hear that? Let's do that again. Let's deactivate it. Now let's activate it again. Now it's back. So you can now see how you can set this volume specifically. You could also set this volume to work with some sort of real-time parameter. So you could say, hey, depending on my player's distance to this object, I want to set this value and I want to scale this value. So that is how you make a master fader for your master submix. Okay, now that we've done that and we've got that working, let's expand a little bit, because in a traditional mixing board, what you have essentially is you have one channel per instrument, typically, right? So you'd have guitar, and you'd have, let's say over here you have drums. Okay. Now, on a mixing board, you would use these faders, or in our analogy, we would use control buses to set these levels. Now, we all know from a real-world experience that this isn't always the case, because for drums, we have multiple channels. We usually have, and let's bring this out here. Let's say we have a kick, and we have a snare, and we have everything else. We'll just call it overhead rooms. Okay, and so for this purpose, let's say we have 3 additional instruments coming in on the drum bus. Because in the traditional mixing world, we would call this a bus or a group, right? We would, grouping them would mean that we are physically changing the faders like a VCA. But a bus would be, we're sending all of this audio to another master channel so that we can control all of these by the master channel. Now, in audio modulation, we're not passing audio signal, we're just controlling the level of the signal. So, but it works the same way. So how would we do this with audio modulation? Well, let's say we've already got our guitar and drums control buses set up just like we set up our master. And again, you can have any amount of control buses that you want. I don't think there's a limit. There might be a limit, but I don't think there is. And let's talk about for a second how this works physically. In a mixing board, let's say we have the kick at -5, which is a lie because we always make the kick the loudest, but let's say we have the snare at -2, and then let's say we have the overheads at +3. So on a traditional mixing board, these faders would be set appropriately. And then all of these would go into our drums bus. And that drum bus would then relatively become a submixer of these channels. So as we turn drums up, it would relatively turn each of these up. So if we turn this drums bus up +2, it would add +2 to all of these. And so in the Unreal Engine, and this is a really important concept, that's called multiplication or stacking or multiplication. And so when you multiply values with math, you always get the right result. So if you multiply anything by 0, you get 0. If you multiply anything by 1, you get that, whatever that number is. So in Unreal Engine, we're used to seeing decibels, so we're used to working with -5 to 0 or -20. But it helps in Unreal Engine to look at these values at what's called normalized, which is 0 to 1. Normalized basically means 1, in essence, 1 is going to equal what we call unity gain. And 0 is going to equal theoretically no sound, which in Unreal is 97 or 96, -96 decibels would be considered 0. So if I drew this fader over here for illustration purposes, if I had normalized volumes, and let's say on a mixing board, this is 0 and this is the max, and then here is -96 decibels, and here is, I don't know, +12 decibels, and then above that, you're blowing your speakers out. In Unreal, we're going to just scale all of this from 0 to, well, 1 would be here, 1 would be unity, and then anything above that would be, plus whatever, maybe let's just double that to 2, but that would be, in essence, blowing your speakers. So you want to try to keep things around 1 for unity gain. And so the way multiplication works is if we set up a control bus to control the click, so let's add a control bus kick, and let's add a control bus snare, and let's add a control bus overhead room. Now what we're doing is these sounds have this control bus and this CB drums control bus. And so because that sound is modulating the volume with both of these, your result is going to be a multiplication of the two. So what this allows you to do is this allows you to use this control bus, CB kick, to only adjust the kick, but then the CB drums to adjust everything inside this group. And so what we're doing now is we're using control buses to make subgroups to control levels as a whole, like we would do on a mixing board. And so the way this would work, let's say that this is our sound source and this is our kick drum. So what we are going to do is essentially in our audio modulation in our volume modulation section, we're going to assign to this control bus drums, and then we're also going to assign it to control bus kick. And we're going to do a union of those two. And so your end result going through your master speaker will be a multiplication of these two values. And you can expand this. You could then add another control bus up here called band. And then the band would control all of these. And then up here, your hierarchy would be the master. And so what you're essentially doing is you're stair-stepping and creating a hierarchy of subgroups. So if I was to draw this out in a little graph, you would have the master control bus. Then you would have the other ones. You would have, maybe we have SFX and we have music. And then under music, we might have 3. We might have combat music, we might have explore music, and we might have menu music. And then you might, under combat, you might have fast and slow. And so you're making all of these control buses like children of these they're not technically children, but they work with that hierarchy structure. So ultimately, if the master's at 0, all of these other ones will be at 0 because they're getting multiplied. So in theory, if we keep master at 1, whatever the next one is going to be the master for that subgroup, and then et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so in a way, it's like mixing subgroups, and you can make as many as you want. I'm going to show you how to do this, and then you will be off and running. So let's say we want to add another hierarchy. So we got our master fader. Now we're going to add our music fader. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a new control bus mix. So I'm going to go audio modulation control bus, not control bus mix, control bus. We're going to call this music. So now we have another fader called music. Now where are we going to put this? We're going to put this on this file. So we're going to open this file and we're going to go down to audio modulation. We're going to go union and we're going to modulate this, and we're going to add that control bus music. So now the control bus music is only going to control the music. So now I want to make, actually, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this control bus master, and I'm going to add that control bus as well. So let's go control bus music. So now I have separate control over the music. So let's put this master back to 1. And let's see how this controls just the music. And you'll hear how the guns are still the same. All right. All right, let's adjust that. Oh, I gotta activate the mix. So here we go. So now the music is quiet, but let's see what the gun sounds like. Gun, still full volume. So now I have separate control over the music and the master. So if I go back to the master, it will change. So the master is now overriding that. So now the music is relative to the master. And then let me hear the gun. So now the gun is softer and the music is softer, but the music is softer relative. Now let me turn the music back up. There we go. And put this at full volume. So now we've got 2 control buses, one for the music, one for the master. And if we wanted to go in, and we could make more control buses. So now we could go into the weapon, and let's see here. Oops, project. Let's see here. Let me find the weapon ability, weapon component. Here we go. So in this weapon, you'll see here that when we go to the weapon, it triggers this sound right here. And let's find the sound, okay? Here's our sound. So now let's put under this one, let's make a new control bus, and let's make this one just for, we'll call it sound effects. So we're gonna go new control bus, we're gonna go CB SFX. So now we've got a control bus mix for the gun sound, and it's filed under SFX. Now keep in mind, we're not making any additional submixes. We're just using control buses to control those levels separate. So I'm going to go back to my master. I'm going to add one more mix stage, and I'm going to add that control bus we just made, control bus sound effects. Now, when I activate this, you'll hear I can turn the gun sound down and leave the music where it is. So let's do that. All right. Gun. Now let's control this. Let's go to activate mix. And now let's turn this down to like 0.2. And here we go. So the gun's a lot softer, music, and we could go back. Let's go balance the gun back up. Let's bring the music down. And then let's hear that. Perfect. And so that is how you make submixes and subgroups, kind of like you would in a traditional audio sense. And so what we have here is, we would call this the master subgroup, and then this would be like a subgroup, which we could file all the music in that. We could put all the sound effects here, and so now we have separate control, music, sound effects, and then the master bus. Now you can create as many control bus mixes as you want. You can activate multiple control bus mixes, and remember, they all multiply. When you select union, they'll all multiply together. So if I had another control bus mix that set the music in half, then it would multiply wherever it is now. So if the music was already at half and you activated another 0.5, you would have the music at 0.25, which would be a quarter or 25%. So that's how control bus mixes work and control buses work. All right, well, I hope this video was really helpful. I know that for me as an audio mix engineer, it took me a while to get my head wrapped around this. Something to consider also is there are lots of ways to activate these mixes in the game. You could also, if you wanted to have physical faders, you could build a widget and that set those parameters. So you could essentially build a mixing board inside your project and use it like a fader. I actually have a video on how to do that. If you want to go check it out, it's how to use widgets to control meta sounds. So you could check that out. So if you could go as far with it as you want. You could build controls inside the game, physical 3D faders. You could control a widget that you just call up when you want to, or you could do it all behind the scenes. It's up to you. I do highly encourage you, even though you're working in audio, to get real familiar with blueprints, real familiar with scripting, because the power of the scripting engine in Unreal is pretty incredible, and it helps to kind of learn your way around that so you can then do all of the audio things you want and take advantage of the DSP capabilities that the audio engine offers. Anyways, hey, if you haven't yet, please like and subscribe to the channel. It helps a lot, and it helps us build community as well. So again, hope this video was helpful, and we'll see you in the next one.